our state, you see the farms popping up all over the place, right? We've got thousands and thousands of panels in fields all across our state.
They don't make any noise, there are no smells involved, there's no ash, there's no emissions, there's no waste.
Some of the studies I've seen show North Carolina having as much wind potential development as the rest of the East Coast combined.
Renewable energy like this that doesn't use water, that doesn't combust fossil fuels, that doesn't emit anything into the air, has an incredibly powerful role to play in preserving the environment.
I think we're going to be seeing more wind and more solar in North Carolina.
Okay, here we go. I've been farming since 1975. Which would be 40 years.
In all of those years, Dawson Singletary has harvested tobacco, cotton, corn, peanuts, and soybeans. Now he is harvesting something new, sunshine.
Never dreamed we'd do it.
Never dreamed an illness would nearly end his career as a farmer either.
I thought I was going to pass, to be truthful about it. I thought I'd be gone in about 6 months.
He thought about selling some of his farmland, and a hog producer was interested.
I did not see putting this land into a hog operation with the scent going straight through the local town.
So Dawson decided to lease 34 acres of his land to Strata Solar. Strata built a solar farm on the land and sells the power it generates to Duke Energy.
I'm happy that I'm able to maintain control of the land and have income from the land as good, if not better, than what it would be if I was able to farm it. It's been a good deal for me, especially with my medical situation.
And so this is really a next generation of family farming, to lease part of your land for solar, allow you to continue doing value-added crops on the rest of the land. And if you decide at the end of that solar lease that you want to go back and continue farming the land, you can do that. Whereas you can't do that with something like real estate development or housing.
Strata also pays Bladen County about $25,000 a year in property taxes for this solar farm, and the county didn't have to invest a dime in infrastructure.
Solar energy, renewable energy development is really one of the best economic development games in town for rural counties.
So in this center, we actually run operations for the entire fleet of Strata's power plants.
Nearly 130 miles away from Dawson Solar Farm, its performance is being monitored in Strata's operations center at its Chapel Hill headquarters. Here, Strata monitors the performance of its 100 solar farms, troubleshoots problems, and even forecasts how much power they will produce.
And that's something that we supply to the utility in advance the day before, so we can tell the utility or any other investor what they're expected to produce tomorrow.
Strata started with about 5 people in 2009 and now employs 300 professional staff and about 1,700 construction workers.
Now it's reading closer to 545.
It is now the largest solar company in the state and the 4th largest in the nation. Its growth reflects the growth of solar across North Carolina. In 2014, there were about 190 companies involved in solar power production in our state, investing $652 million and employing 5,600 people. North Carolina ranks 2nd in the nation in new solar development and 4th in installed solar capacity. One of the reasons for the growth is a 75% decline in the cost of solar technology over the past decade.
And it's just like, Henry Ford with the Model T. The more you build, the cheaper they get. We're achieving that kind of scale right now that's really helping to drive down the prices in the solar industry.
Public policy has helped too. In 2007, the state passed what is called the Renewable Energy and Efficiency Portfolio Standard. It requires utility companies to generate 12.5% of their energy from renewable sources by 2021. And a 35% state renewable energy tax credit passed the same year helped offset the cost of solar installation.
The policies that North Carolina put in place that include the state tax credit and the renewable portfolio standard have been critical in getting North Carolina to where it is today.
The state's 35% tax credit added to a 30% federal tax credit.
So when you put those together, that's about 65% of the cost of a solar project. So that made it very attractive for developers and then homeowners as well.
Most of the solar growth has been in large utility-scale operations. But businesses like NC Solar Now that install rooftop solar on homes and businesses have also grown.
Well, it's been phenomenal. It's actually been really, really terrific. We've had an explosion of sales of solar systems in North Carolina over the past 5 years. The prices for solar have come down year after year. More and more people have become aware that this is even a possibility.
We're looking at 27 solar panels on the back east-facing roof of our house.
NC Solar Now installed these panels on the roof of Jim Gulick's North Raleigh home.
My wife and I both feel strongly that we should do our part to help reduce the emission of greenhouse gases.
The Gulicks have also seen a 2/3 reduction in their power bill. It was so low one month that Duke Energy came to check the meter to see if there was a problem. The panels and installation cost the Gulicks $29,000, but that's mostly offset by the savings on their power bill and the tax credits.
In 7 years, it will have paid for itself.
With better technology and better prices, hopefully more people will be putting up solar on their homes.
When the sun shines on it, it gets hot.
NC Solar Now buys these solar water heaters from a Garner company called Solar Hot, which in turn has its own suppliers.
We get suppliers in town, we get suppliers all over the state and all over the world.
Showing how the growth of solar ripples out into the state's economy, sometimes in ways you might not expect.
On this particular project, we have around 4,600 feet.
Carborough's Fortress Fencing started out doing mostly small residential jobs. Now it's building thousands of feet of fencing around solar farms.
When we started doing solar work, it really grew our business exponentially.
You're going to be able to follow that contour.
In the past 6 years, this business has grown from 12 to 60 employees, and its revenue has quadrupled.
So it's been an incredible growth.
But it's not all sunny in our state's solar industry. Next, clean energy controversies.
Our state legislature, I think, is not acting in the common good.
Faith Community Church is powered by two suns above. One of them is Sunshine. The church installed 20 solar panels on its roof.
The sun shines on the solar panels on top of this building. The power comes down through a line and goes straight into use here at the building.
Seems simple enough, but while the panels have generated electricity, they've also generated controversy.
We're here today to announce a solar test case.
The North Carolina Waste Action and Reduction Network is a utility watchdog group that owns the panels and is selling the power they produce to the church.
It has reduced our costs some.
In part because the church pays NC Warren a much lower rate than it pays Duke Energy for electricity.
We want to pay for it on a God-given rate. God didn't charge us anything for the sunshine, and we want to use that rate instead of Duke Power's rate.
But these panels are not just about paying a lower rate. It's a challenge to a North Carolina law that says only utility companies can generate and sell electricity.
We want the Attorney General to require Duke to stop blocking energy competition. The days of monopoly control are over, or need to be over.
North Carolina is one of only 4 states in the nation that prohibits any entity that's not a utility company to generate and sell electricity. Some say allowing third parties to do it would open up competition and further boost the solar power industry in our state.
We're not trying to put Duke Energy out of business, but we want to rebalance the relationship between Duke Energy and the people of the state who grant Duke Energy the permission to operate in this state.
But Duke Energy says NC Warren is violating the law. It wants the State Utilities Commission to enforce the state's ban on third-party financing and sales of electricity.
There's no real guarantee that it saves people money. And when you look at rates in North Carolina below the national average, solar number 4 in the nation, there's a lot of good going on that I don't know if third-party sales adds that much to it.
Another hot topic at the center of the state's solar industry is the expiration of the state's 30% renewable energy tax credit. The legislature allowed the credit to sunset on December 31st, despite calls for its renewal.
The House and the Senate agreed to the following amendment to the
House Majority Leader Mike Hager led the push to let the credit expire, even though it's credited for much of the growth and proliferation of solar companies in our state.
It served its purpose. It got the groundwork started. Now it's time for these folks to move on and become competitive.
Hager says the hundreds of millions of dollars the tax credit cost the state should have been given back to all taxpayers.
Why just the solar companies? Why just the film companies? Why not the home building companies? Why not the used car sales companies? Why not these or why not that? Why pick that up just because it's sexy at the time?
But leaders in the solar industry say the loss of the tax credit will slow its progress and cost the state economically.
There are going to be projects that we would have done in North Carolina that we will not do in North Carolina because they won't make economic sense. And so we'll deploy those dollars elsewhere.
O'Hara and others say large solar companies building utility-scale projects will be able to weather the loss of the tax credit better than smaller companies doing rooftop solar for homes and businesses.
There we go. Many of the residential scale developers are telling me that, this may well shut down that market for 2 or 3 years until solar prices drop even further and make it more feasible.
Making sure those are all plugged in.
NC Solar now says it will take time to see how the loss of the state tax credit will affect its business.
With the federal tax credit in place, the industry will survive, prices have fallen, and the return on investment is still in the reasonable range where people are going to do it.
You guys need another set of hands here?
Though Oliner says the loss of the tax credit means a longer wait for that return on investment, which he says may deter some potential customers.
And that does keep some people out. The difference between a 5-year return on investment and a 7-year return on investment is big for some people.
Next, a major investment in wind power in North Carolina and what it says about that industry's future in our state.
We think there's a lot of growth potential in North Carolina as well as the rest of the country.
And you can see down there a couple hundred yards, a 2x4 with some survey tape on it, and that represents one of our turbines.
Craig Poff is Director of Business Development for Iberdrola Renewables. It's one of the largest developers of wind and solar power in the world. Iberdrola is building North Carolina's first commercial wind farm on this 22,000 acres of flat farmland in northeastern North Carolina near Elizabeth City.
It's one of our larger single-phase projects here in the U.S.
It's called the Amazon Wind Farm U.S. East, since Amazon is a partner in the project and will use some of the electricity to power its data centers. Right now, the company is building and improving 60 miles of roads at the site. That will allow Iberdrola to haul in and construct 104 wind turbines here this spring and summer. When finished, this site will look almost exactly like this Iberdrola wind farm near Dayton, Ohio, with turbines on 330-foot tall towers and blades 375 feet in diameter. The North Carolina site will produce about 200 megawatts, or enough electricity to power about 61,000 homes.
What we're really interested in is the wind speed 300 to 400, 500 feet in the air.
In years of meteorological monitoring, Iberdrola determined that it had the wind speed it needed here. During that time, it also secured the required local, state, and federal permits.
We want to be careful. We want to build a project that has as minimal impact as possible,
including impacts on wildlife.
We actually had an avian radar system here looking for migrating songbirds at night, just to make sure that we weren't putting wind turbines in a place that was going to create harm.
The project has also avoided the level of not in my backyard complaints that killed a proposed wind farm in Carteret County several years ago.
Being able to site the project out here in what's locally known as the desert, we're able to avoid the conflicts with homes, with roads, with infrastructure.
Renewable energy like this that doesn't use water, that doesn't combust fossil fuels, that doesn't emit anything into the air, has an incredibly powerful role to play in preserving the environment.
This wind farm is also playing a powerful role in the economy of Pasquotank and Perquimans counties. Iberdrola will pay more than $1 million a year in lease payments to local landowners and tax payments to the counties.
It has a profound effect and positively impacts a lot of people.
Especially construction workers.
I think the head count today is in the 40 to 50 range, and that'll peak out at over 200 whenever we get into the turbine erection.
The construction is already boosting the area's economy, bringing business to hotels and restaurants. This gravel producer and this concrete company. After the construction, the wind farm will have about 14 full-time employees with salaries of around $75,000 a year, almost double the median income in this area.
Really a tremendous opportunity to provide jobs and income to the community.
Across North Carolina, there are about 32 companies involved in wind power. There are materials manufacturers like this PVG plant in Shelby that employs about 500 people. About a third of them help make a special lightweight fiberglass for wind turbine blades. Some of it goes to blade maker Certex in Huntersville. There are also technology companies like the Cary-based ABB, which employs 2,000 people in North Carolina. Its facility on NC State's Centennial campus develops smart grid technology used in the solar and wind industries.
We're a major supplier of technology into the actual wind generators themselves, but then also how you collect that power, integrate it to the grid, and then the other part is how you manage the grid, given that you have these variable resources.
ABB also developed the technology to bring electricity onshore from wind generators more than 25 miles offshore. That technology could be used along North Carolina's coast.
Some of the studies I've seen show North Carolina having as much wind potential development as the rest of the East Coast combined, just about.
That's because of the state's relatively shallow offshore waters and its proximity to the Gulf Stream, which helps fuel high winds off our coast. Iberdrola Renewables has no plans to develop offshore wind power here, but its $400 million investment in this wind farm near Elizabeth City is a good start for our state's wind power industry.
And it's exciting for us, of course, to have the first wind farm in North Carolina and one of the first in the U.S. Southeast, period.
Next, our state's future in renewable energy.
More independent generation, more self-generation, more of that off-grid generation. That's where we need to be.
To learn more about the WRAL documentary Power Switch and Alternative Energy in North Carolina, go to WRAL.com and type WRAL Doc in the search box and search Solar Farm to learn more about Capital Broadcasting Company's own solar farm. You can also connect with WRAL Doc on Facebook and Twitter. The 2007 portfolio standard that requires utility companies to invest more in renewables, and the tax credit that help offset the cost of such investments for businesses and individuals are examples of public policy that helped fuel the explosive growth of solar power in North Carolina.
We have a leadership position in solar, and we are now in a position to have a leadership position in wind if we choose to accept them.
But Calland and others are worried about how politics will affect solar and wind policy in our state.
There's a lot of little pieces out there that kind of make the tapestry, if you will, of a sustainable market for clean energy. And there's people picking at threads right now. And if they pull enough threads, the thing will unravel.
If I could have the body's attention, please.
Two threads are the tax credit that expired last month and the portfolio standard that legislators like Representative Mike Hager would like to replace.
What we need to do is take a step back from that and focus on an energy plan for North Carolina, one that reduces the cost of doing business for all our citizens, for all our manufacturers, and all our businesses.
Hager wants a comprehensive energy plan for North Carolina and one that allows third-party generation. He even sees a day where all of us will be off the grid.
Sometime in the future, I can see all of us either being hooked up into a community generation or our self-generators.
But Hager says more traditional types of energy generation are the bridge to get us there.
It's kind of like an apple that's not ripe yet. I think the green energy industry will become a valid energy producer. It's just not ready yet.
Duke Energy agrees. Even though it just finished building the largest solar farm east of the Mississippi near Warsaw, North Carolina, and has invested $500 million in solar in our state since 2007, solar accounts for only about 1% of our state's energy. Most of our power still comes from coal, nuclear, and natural gas.
I think that the other technologies, the traditional technologies, will be around for a while, but the renewables piece is going to continue to grow and probably grow much more aggressively over the next decade or two. The days of the traditional regulated monopoly are probably numbered.
As the technology improves to the point where renewable energy and better batteries will allow individuals and communities to cut the cord from the power grid and the fossil fuel energy it carries.